Jessica, I want to start with you because it feels like we've kind of been on this train before with the H20. We had the cat and mouse game. We, of course, had our own reporting that China says we're not even really that interested in the H20 chip right now. And now Nvidia is saying we're not even making the H20. It's kind of a standstill. What
It
makes us
almost
think?
sounds like it's some kind of posturing or press release, Akash. But no, when I saw this yesterday, a year and a half ago, I went to Beijing with then Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo to watch her negotiate these export controls with her counterparts in China. And while it was a very different administration and a very different time, even then, it was clear there was not much action going on. There was just a lot of talk and diplomacy. And I think, it's a fascinating move. We've been reporting in the information for weeks that the US government was leaning towards allowing these chips, obviously showing the lobbying power of Nvidia. But there are many questions, and I think you nailed it. In the US, we tend to forget that Beijing is the other side of the coin. And, this happened with TikTok and ByteDance. It's not just what Washington wants, it's what Beijing wants. Now, China does have a problem. The local Huawei chips and other domestic chips cannot beat these chips when it comes to training. And so I do think there is some possibility of China letting these US chips in for training, definitely not inference. But right now, it's just a bunch of statements, and we really don't know yet.
Patrick, what do you think of this?
So I don't know if I take this as reality yet, right? We've seen a lot of yeses, a lot of nos, a lot of posturing, a lot of negotiation. But I am surprised that we somehow went from the H20 being a bad idea to the H200 being a good idea. I think that, people realize you're not going to build a next generation frontier model using an H200. You really need a Blackwell for that. And as Jessica said, even though Huawei Cloud Matrix is pretty good when it's completely networked, but it takes 6 to 10x more power, and it's a lot more difficult to train a next generation frontier model. So until they start shipping and revenue gets cited by Nvidia, I'm not yet a believer that this is a done deal.
I want to talk about then, Patrick, what needs to happen then for this to be a done deal? What is the next step here?
Yeah, so it looks like there's always been friction between the Hawks, the Defense Department, and the Commerce Department and others. The irony is that even the H20 was very much a green based on the federal government's BIS regulations about density and performance. But what I think has to happen is that I'll call it the observability and the tracking mechanisms need to be in place to make sure that these H200s go to the right place. Listen, it's not a national security issue if the Uber of China or the Instacart of China is using H200s to even do inference or create a decent model. I do believe that the paperwork exists. It just has to be implemented and okay. But until NVIDIA recognizes revenue, I think anything can happen.
So, Jessica, we had Channer from our Asia Bureau on the show a couple days ago, and we talked a lot about this parallel ecosystem that China is trying to build with its own, not just chips, but its own models. And it doesn't necessarily matter if it's not as good as the stuff coming out of North America. It just matters that they're all using their own technology. My question for you is, how much of a risk do you think this is? And also, long term here, we've seen this play out. China is going to catch up at some point, right, with their own chips?
Completely. I completely reject this war analogy. I've said it before. I understand its purpose in galvanizing innovation and competition. You talk to any CEO of a leading tech company privately, and they say China's right behind and is going to be as good. And this idea of keeping them at bay is foolish. Now, it doesn't mean the U.S. shouldn't try to be as competitive as possible. Another aspect of this that I'm confused about is the 25% cut the Trump administration is saying it's going to take from the sales of these chips. Now, it's not unprecedented to have the government take a cut of, say, foreign defense sales from defense contractors. But the thinking there has been that the government has been doing some of the R&D and backing those technologies. That's not the case here. So I think this is also something that people should really be questioning, and honestly seems quite unprecedented when we're talking about the private sector in the United States.
Patrick, we hear a lot about Nvidia's sales to China. What about all the other chip companies? I mean, they all have skin in the game too. We don't talk about AMD sales to China or even the hyperscalers. We know that Google's TPU is getting traction. I mean, what do we know about their international efforts to sell it abroad?
Yeah, so I was an executive at AMD for over a decade, and even back then, we had very clear restrictions on a metric called flops, right? That was used to develop supercomputers that could do anything from weather simulation to nuclear simulations. So this is very much a thing for AMD. And it will also, I mean, if we ever see exports of something like a TPU, which I doubt we will, it would apply to them as well. And the restrictions are very clear on the schedule. It's a 2x2 matrix on performance and density, and that gets updated every year. But AMD very much is going to be part of this game. And when Intel in 2026, when they bring out some of their new technology, they will too. Some of the startups like Grok will be covered too.
So, Jessica, with your reporter hat on, and I say this because you are the editor-in-chief, but you also you're a reporter at heart. You know, with that hat on, besides trying to figure out what the Trump administration is thinking with their next post on Truth Social or on X, I mean, what are the big strategic questions that you are trying to get answers to right now?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think Patrick nailed it for will these chips flow? Will the revenue flow? Who's going to get them? I mean, all our reporting suggests that you can try and control who gets them, but China's getting the chips. So, and the DeepSeeks and the Alibabas and the Tencents, right? So, I think there is a huge gray market as well. It's been well documented by many publications, including ourselves. And so I think that's worthy of more scrutiny, because in the end of the day, these models are very, very advanced in China. And that's also, and stay tuned for more reporting this week on some of the progress of some of these major model makers in China, as well as Huawei, of course. I mean, while we pointed out that they're not a viable competitor in training and probably won't be because of a range of export controls that are going to prevent that lower down in the stack, they are making progress. And that is another important topic to look out for.
Great. Well, Jessica and Patrick, I want to thank you for coming on. It is a fast-moving story, and I anticipate we have only just seen the beginnings of it. That is Jessica Lessin, our editor-in-chief, and Patrick Moorhead from Moore Insights and Strategy here on TITV.